penalty if you fail a drug test. But you know, like I said, it happens, and hopefully some kids can learn from it, but just don't get caught.
Welcome to Down to Dunk Special Edition, A World Without Andrew. Andrew is off this entire week. He's decided to let us do all of the podcasts, all three of them this week. And so today we are recording on a Sunday morning, a beautiful Sunday morning out here in Portland, Oregon. And I am recording with Michele Berra. Michele, what's up?
It's a lovely afternoon also over here in Italy. It's sunny. It's maybe a little bit too hot, but it's Sunday, so
Okay.
it's a good time to talk basketball.
Well, I appreciate you taking time out of your weekend to record a Down to Dunk. Me and Michele are going to be recording today. We're also going to be recording tomorrow for the Wednesday pod. And then Friday, I think I'm going to be on the Fry pod as well. I don't think Michele will be on that one.
Wow,
so-
what a week, Alex.
I know.
A week full of Down to Dunk.
It's a great week for it, though, because I'm home alone right now, so I don't have a ton to do. I have very little responsibility.
Wow.
So great week for it. If you have noticed on YouTube, Andrew told us he was going to make thumbnails for this episode, but he didn't, so I had to make them. So you might see a koala bear on YouTube as our background, and that was because I didn't know what else to use, and I just watched a YouTube video about koala bears, who are apparently the dumbest animals in the world when you compare the size of their brain to the size of their skull. They have the biggest ratio difference between those of all the animals in the world. They're super slow. They just eat unnutritious food all day that doesn't satisfy them in any way. They're just great animals. So I made that our background, and I'll have to find a new animal for Wednesday. But today, and actually this week, what we are doing, based on the recommendation of a Down to Dunk listener at I am KevKevBot, he wanted us to do an NBA expansion draft.
Wow.
Obviously there's been talk about, Seattle and potentially Vegas coming into the league in the next couple of years, and that would lead to an expansion draft. And while we have always talked about it on Down to Dunk in terms of like, okay, if you can only protect this amount of players on OKC's roster, what would you do? But we're going to expand it this week to the entire league. So today, me and Michele will be going through every Eastern Conference team and protecting players. On Wednesday's show, we're going to go through every Western Conference team, including the Oklahoma City Thunder, protecting players. And then on Friday, we're going to split the Fry Pod guys into two teams, two expansion teams, and they can choose what cities they're from. They don't have to choose Seattle and Vegas. If they want to be the Enid Outlaws or something like that, they can do that. And they are going to draft teams based on who me and Michele have left unprotected out there for the taking.
Wow. Are there any other cities that are in talks for an NBA team? I know, something in the middle, Kansas, whatever.
I mean, Kansas City has the arena. So people have talked about them. People have talked about like Louisville as an option. I do think there's a few other cities out there that could potentially get it. It just seems like everyone's kind of gravitating towards Seattle and Vegas for obvious
I'd be
reasons.
curious. Is Minnesota going to be an Eastern Conference team?
I mean, I haven't heard anyone realistically suggesting an Eastern Conference team. And
no,
so,
I mean, suppose that Vegas and Seattle are going to be the two teams.
Who's going to move?
Yeah,
it would. I mean, geographically, Memphis would make the most sense. Minnesota would be another obvious one, or New Orleans. I don't think OKC would move. I feel like there's at least three teams that are further east than us.
Yeah.
But that would be fun. It'd be fun to be in the East. What would you think about them? They talked about expanding to like Mexico or something. What would you think about if expansion brought a team to Italy? They randomly decide to plop an NBA team in Italy. Would you be pretty pumped for that?
No, it's a recipe for disaster. Pro sport in Italy is not really a model for sustained success.
Okay.
So no. London maybe, but it's too. I mean, the traveling, it's too much. Mexico, that is workable, I think, in terms of flying and whatnot. But to me, like Vegas makes the most sense, and it will probably be done. The other one, Seattle, it's okay. I guess it's okay. I wonder if something else pops up.
Yeah,
But
I would enjoy Seattle just because back in the day, Blazers Sonics was kind of a fun little rivalry because they're only 3 hours apart. So I would enjoy that. I also loved the Sonics jerseys back in the day.
Yeah.
So I hope they get a team. Okay, so first let's go over the rules. So these rules come from they're actually from a Bleacher Report article, I believe, from Eric Pincus, who did a similar exercise a few years ago. But these rules come from Larry Kuhn's CBA FAQ. I don't know if these are going to change at all. You know, it's possible that some of these rules could change with the next expansion draft. The last time we had an expansion draft with 2 teams at the same time, I believe, was in 1995 when Toronto and Vancouver came in at the same time. And so I think these rules are pretty much the same as what they were back then. So again, these may change, but this is what we're going with. Each team can protect up to 8 players. Teams must expose at least 1 player who cannot become a free agent that following summer. So when we're looking at players, we're going to be looking at what is going to happen in the summer of 2024. Like, do they have a player option, team option, early termination option? In that case, they would be ineligible. You can't protect them or unprotect them. They're just ineligible for this draft. Pending unrestricted free agents are not eligible. A pending restricted free agent becomes unrestricted if selected and cannot re-sign with their original team. So as an example, Poku, let's say Poku doesn't get an extension this fall. He goes into next summer. He's a restricted free agent. If the expansion team drafted Poku, they don't necessarily like just get him. He instantly becomes an unrestricted free agent. Now they are allowed to re-sign him. Let's say it's Seattle in this case. Seattle could re-sign him to a longer deal. The only stipulation is that he can't go back to OKC, but he's unrestricted. He can go to any team he wants. So teams are kind of de-incentivized from drafting restricted free agents in the expansion draft. You can still do it, but you might lose that guy, which I do think that's an interesting point.
Yeah.
Very important point, especially for a team like OKC. No team can lose more than 1 player in an expansion draft. That really only matters for like 4 or 5 teams.
Yeah.
One of it is OKC.
Sure.
And then some things that don't matter as much for this exercise, but if a team's player is selected, they receive a trade exception in return if they're over the salary cap.
Yeah.
And then teams can compensate expansion teams, usually with draft picks, in exchange for selecting or not selecting particular players. You wonder if that would come into play with OKC. Like if they were really in a bind where they're having to unprotect someone they really want to keep, would they be willing to shell out one of their future draft picks just to convince a team not to take that person?
Yeah. But the trade exception becomes really important. And I think it's something that I kept in mind in some of the teams that we will discuss later on. Because if you have like a big contract of a guy that you don't necessarily see as a necessary piece, and maybe I should have done it a little bit more aggressive, then you get a trade exception. And it may be like a jail-free card. Like if you get like a guy that you say, okay, I have it, I'll play him, but if I can have like the same amount of money and get 2 players, I will be much, much better off. Then, you know, that is something that also can guide your protecting or unprotecting a player.
And there's some interesting things that we'll get into as we start going through the individual teams about decisions a team would have to make before they actually select their players. Because depending on whether you pick up an option or not, that might decide whether a player is eligible to be protected or ineligible to be protected. So without further ado, Michele, any other preamble for this?
No, let's get into the meat.
Going to get into the meat. So I'm going to share my screen. If you're listening, check out our YouTube. This will be easy to follow on audio, but it will be more fun to follow on video.
Yeah, and by the way, preamble, this is probably going to be released as a video on YouTube immediately. The podcast maybe later in the week. We're not sure yet when they will be released. So
yeah, it's all up to Andrew.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're starting out And what we did is Andrew just sent me thumbnails for the pod. Oops. Well, too bad, Andrew. Doing Koala Bear
tomorrow.
Okay, so I assigned each of us an equal number of Eastern and Western Conference teams so that one person could make their selections and then we could discuss it if need be. So we're going to start with in order of how they finished last year in the Eastern Conference, starting with the Milwaukee Bucks. Now they have 10 eligible players, which means they're going to have to unprotect at least 2. Giannis, Chris Middleton, Brook Lopez, Bobby Portis, Pat Connaughton, Marjon Beauchamp, AJ Green, Andre Jackson Jr., Chris Livingston, and Thanasis Antetokounmpo. Now, the one interesting thing here is Drew Holiday does have a player option for next summer, $39.4 million, which if he declined or if he didn't make a decision on it by the time we got to the expansion draft, he would be ineligible. If he picked that up by the time of the expansion draft, he would be eligible and then would need to be protected. Now, what did you decide with Drew Holiday? You had him pick it up?
Yeah. I strongly feel that Drew has a market as a player in the league, not quite at that figure. So if he wants to get an extension, which I think it would be a wise monetary move for him, then he needs to exercise that player option, and we can get into an extension talk. So I think that in all likelihood, he will likely have his play option for 2024, 2025, and then it's going to be probably a 2-year extension. So it's 3 years in total, something like that.
Okay, and by choosing to do that, that now means that Drew Holiday would be eligible and that you would need to protect him. So let's go see who McKelly picked. So your unprotected guys, Andre Jackson Jr., second-round pick, I think, who they just drafted. Chris Livingston, another recent draft pick.
Yeah.
And then Giannis's brother.
I don't particularly care about brotherhood. If someone wants to pick him up, great. Do that. I don't feel that Thanasis is on an A list for an expansion team. Maybe someone who wants to lure Thanasis away, Giannis away, then it's something that you could do. But I mean, it's I think that Milwaukee needs to focus on winning, and Giannis is there. You want to keep all the players that can play basketball, and then you figure out later if Thanasis goes.
Now, did you actually have to think about Andre Jackson Jr., Chris Livingston versus AJ Green?
Yeah, I ran some math and some
really.
I checked on clean the glass, like height, stuff like that. And so I said, okay, AJ Green sounds like a player that may play a couple of minutes, and the other ones are just whatever.
Yeah, I could see Andre Jackson Jr. getting picked up by someone.
Yeah,
and like you said with Thanasis, like again, you can only take one player per team, so it's very unlikely, even if you unprotected his brother, that someone is going to take Thanasis.
Yeah, I mean, he was on the open market. I mean, if someone wants to really lure Giannis away and they think that Thanasis is the key, I mean, he would have like gotten like maybe more than 1 million, like 2.5, something like that.
So one thing, and this is kind of starting off this theme, man, it's going to be rough for these expansion teams out there. There's not going to be like a ton of amazing options.
Yeah, especially for the you can only pick one, because like teams like Orlando, Memphis, OKC, like just with these 3 teams, if you can pick everyone, you would have like a very good young team. Well, not very good, a very interesting young team that can lose a bunch of games but have a structure. If you can get just one player among those teams, then it's becoming less likely that you can get like a nice team out of that.
Yeah, I almost feel if I was an expansion team, I might just try to get seconds. If I could just convince these teams, hey, will you just give me a second and I won't take any of your guys? Because expansion teams can still sign free agents. They can still draft players. Looking back at the 95 draft, it looked like each of Toronto and Vancouver each got a first-round pick and a second-round pick. And their first-round picks were like pick 6 and pick 7, I think. And then second-round pick was like kind of in that range, but in the second round. So they will have draft picks as well. Moving on to Boston, who have 11 eligible candidates. The Zinger, Kristaps Porzingis, Tatum and Brown, Malcolm Brogdon, Derek White, Robert Williams III, Al Horford, Peyton Pritchard, Jordan Walsh, O'Shea Brissett, who I did not realize has a $2.5 million player option for next summer. I'm going to say pick that up.
Yeah.
And then Justin Champagnie, who can be waived or it becomes a restricted free agent. It doesn't really matter in this case. So this one, again, I felt like was pretty straightforward. The unprotected guys, in my opinion, would be Peyton Pritchard, O'Shea Brissett, and Justin Champagnie. And the thing about someone like Peyton Pritchard, well, first of all, we've already heard things about Peyton Pritchard like wanting potentially to find a bigger role on another team.
Yeah, good luck.
I think he was in the same draft class as Poku, so he is extension eligible.
Yeah.
And it's the same type of deal where, maybe an expansion team would be excited about Peyton Pritchard, but at the same time, he's a restricted free agent. So if they do draft him, he becomes an unrestricted free agent the next summer. He could sign anywhere. He could re-sign with that expansion club, but you would hopefully have some assurances if you're going to draft a restricted free agent.
Yeah. Yeah. If the number is 8, then Boston is really safe. And I feel that if the number were to be 6, then they would be okay as well, because I think that Horford would be the odd man out. And mainly for the TPE, Jordan Walsh is, yes, it's a nice pick, but whatever. I think that the main 6 guys are the ones that really Boston wants to keep, and then Horford, yeah. But
yeah, I probably should have thought about that aspect of it more, because Boston, they are going to have, obviously next year, Jaylen Brown's first year of his deal kicks in at $50.1 million. Would they consider something like Malcolm Brogdon, like unprotecting him, just kind of trying to bait one of these expansion teams to take that $22 million off of their books, just to save them a little bit of money, over someone like O'Shea Brissett, who, even if he picks up his player option, it's only a $2.5 million hit. Maybe they would consider that.
Yeah, I think that they want really to. I don't think that you can replace 22 millions of Malcolm Brogdon with the current free agent. Well, maybe you can get part of it, but I think the teams like Boston, Denver, Milwaukee, they're trying to, let's keep everything that we have, and we move on, because they are in the championship contention window, and I don't think that they would love to move other pieces around. I think that Malcolm Brogdon, among every piece that they have, it's the one that they tried to shed. I think that Memphis wanted Marcus Smart for the trade to happen. So yeah, maybe, but I don't know. I don't know if you can easily replicate what Brogdon give them with two players.
And the other factor is that if you do unprotect a guy and you lose him, you're getting an exception back, but you're not getting any other assets in that deal.
Yeah.
And is it more likely in their minds that they could get to next summer and move off of Brogdon's expiring contract for something, if he's still like a functional player at that point, maybe another team would just want Malcolm Brogdon in exchange for anything, instead of getting nothing back other than an exception.
Yeah. And if suppose that the expansion draft happens tomorrow, then I can see a team like Boston saying, okay, OKC has 21 players. I kind of like Garuba, Ty, Treyman. I kind of like JRE. Let's unprotect Brogdon. If we get the TPE, we'll just call some press and say, hey, if you end up cutting those guys, I can just get them. Because the TPE doesn't allow you to get a free agents. It just allows you to do trades. And so, I mean, you don't get functional cap space. So you just get a space that you can use in trades. And so if you do it at the beginning of the season where teams has 16, 18, 19 players where they have to cut players, that it might be a good strategy, because if you like some young players, then you can do it.
You're kind of talking me into this. Should we unprotect Malcolm Brogdon?
Again, I don't know. I really don't know. I don't love him, but for next year, I think if I were Boston, I would stick. Again, I did it for other teams.
Yeah. Okay. We're coming up to one team where you definitely did it. Okay, well, let's move on then to the Philadelphia 76ers. Now, this is one of those points where, like, if teams knew an expansion draft was coming, I think they would handle things differently. You know, like the Sixers are setting themselves up for next summer for some reason. You know, something is going to happen, apparently. They're going to open up all this max room and bring in someone. And as a result, they have so many guys who are going to be unrestricted free agents or who are on two-way deals, and you can't the guys are ineligible for the expansion draft as well. So they actually only have 6 players who are eligible: Joel Embiid, Paul Reed, Tyrese Maxey, Jaden Springer, PJ Tucker, who I think is going to pick up his $11.5 million player option next summer, and then Philip Petrusev, who is a guy they got a few drafts ago. They've just brought him over. He is eligible, and lucky for them that he is eligible, because if he wasn't, it would be a little bit tougher of a decision. I mean, I guess they would unprotect PJ Tucker. That actually would be a pretty easy decision too. But in this case, I unprotected Philip Petrusev. Although, should I unprotect PJ Tucker instead? I don't think anyone would anyone take him?
No, I don't think so. I mean, it's a bad contract, and you don't want to pick him up. Petrushev, it's not a player that I can see playing functional defense in the NBA. I mean, he played at Gonzaga, and he was a machine offensively, but defensively was just boy oh boy.
Yeah.
No. Okay. Just no.
So Philly's a pretty straightforward one. It's just funny how many players they have that are ineligible. Like all of Tobias Harris, James Harden, D'Anthony Melton, Korkmaz, Daniel House, Patrick Beverley, Montrezl Harrell, Mo Bamba, Terquavian Smith. All these guys just aren't even eligible for the expansion draft. Okay, moving on to Cleveland. They have 12 guys who are eligible: Darius Garland, Donovan Mitchell, Jarrett Allen, Karis LeVert, Max Strus, Isaac Okoro, Evan Mobley, Georges Niang, Ricky Rubio, Dean Wade, Ty Jerome, Sam Merrill. Even with all those guys, I mean, 12 guys, that means you have to unprotect 4. It actually ends up being pretty straightforward, which is just those last 4: Ricky Rubio, Dean Wade, Ty Jerome, and Sam Merrill. I was surprised that Ty Jerome was even eligible. I didn't realize that he had, like, it wasn't even like a team option on the second year. It was more like a guaranteed, non-guarantee deal, which those guys still count for eligibility. So yeah, this one's pretty straightforward. I thought about someone like Isaac Okoro, because again, he's extension eligible. He's a restricted free agent. Like if they got in a bind, they could unprotect him and kind of dare the other team to take him because he's a restricted free agent and he's become an unrestricted free agent.
Yeah.
But they don't really need to.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, had they have like an insurance that, well, suppose that they know that Ricky Rubio is able to play 100%, then maybe you want to keep him for defensive purposes, for the fact that whenever he was really healthy, it was functional for the team. And then you can put Okoro there and say, okay, try to pick him up because he's a restricted free agent. You don't really love the fit with the fact he's a non-shooter and non-creator, which it's apparent in some of Cleveland lineups. And so you can do that. But at the end of the day, I mean, you don't know what Ricky Rubio can do next year. And it's also unlikely that someone will pick him up. I mean, it's probably more likely that they will just pick Sam Merrill because he's a draft pick. And it's okay, let's try him out. Instead of getting someone who is a veteran that, I mean, it doesn't give you much in terms of upside. And again, an expansion team to me is going to have a few veterans, maybe, and then just projects all over the place.
Yeah, I would agree with that. So again, another one that's very straightforward and no like super interesting players available for the expansion team. So moving on to the Knicks, 9 guys eligible: Julius Randle, Jalen Brunson, RJ Barrett, Mitchell Robinson, Dante DiVincenzo, Emmanuel Quickley, Quentin Grimes, Miles McBride, and Josh Hart. And I included Josh Hart here because there's talk that he is likely going to get an extension at some point in August. So if he got that extension, he would then be eligible. You would need to protect him. And this was probably the first interesting decision I feel like there was to be made. And you decided to unprotect Miles McBride over Dante DiVincenzo. So what was your thinking on that?
First of all, I had in my mind 3 candidates for these. One will be very, very difficult to swallow for many people out there, which is Mitchell Robinson. I don't love the idea of having a lot of cap space and playing time for Mitchell Robinson on any team in the NBA. I like the fact that he's a defender. I don't like the fact that he's a poor decision maker on offense, and he doesn't create any. I mean, I think that New York probably plays better or a more fluid kind of basketball without him. And so I was really torn. But then at the end, say, I mean, you're doing this to protect a guy that is a restricted free agent, and he's likely not to be a guy that a team just jumps on. You just unprotect Miles McBride. And between him and Dante, I said, okay, I just signed the guy. I think they have a very precise role in mind for Dante DiVincenzo. And so at the end of the day, again, restricted free agents are not the nicest thing for an expansion team to pick up, because they would just remove the production, allow them to talk. It's basically if you have your own free agent, which puts you in a better position to sign him, but it's not a guarantee.
Right.
And also it's the fact that McBride is a 6'1" point guard that is, I mean, probably the most there is an influx of small point guards in the league. And even if McBride is good, I think that you can replace his role pretty easily if you need to.
Yeah, when I was originally going through, I initially put DiVincenzo, but then the more I thought about it, it was like, well, they just brought DiVincenzo in. He's probably going to take up a lot of those guard minutes that McBride may have gotten in the past. Mm-hmm. So it seems like they're already valuing DiVincenzo over him. So yeah, it does make sense. Okay, we're a third of the way through the Eastern Conference. If you're an expansion team, which of these players that are available are you most excited about?
Oh boy,
is it Deuce McBride?
Yeah, probably.
Which Richard, like,
yeah, you probably pick McBride, and then maybe you pick someone from Cleveland, just because these are like just players that you know.
Dean Wade? Could I interest you in a Dean Wade?
Oh, Dean Wade is terrible defensively, just terrible. I remember OKC picking him apart, just like setting screen to put Dean Wade in pick and roll situations, just cook him. So no, I don't know. No, it's terrible, to be honest with you. I mean, there's nothing that I really like in this expansion draft. It's not my problem today, but yeah,
it's not. And I do think the options start getting a little better with the Western Conference. There's a few teams that at least have to unprotect some interesting players. Let's move on to Brooklyn, though, who only have 8 guys eligible. And I don't know if I mentioned this at the start, but you have to unprotect at least one guy. So yeah, even though you can protect 8, if you only have 8 to protect, that means you can only protect 7, and one of them has to be unprotected. So we have Ben Simmons, Cam Johnson, Mikal Bridges, Dorian Finney-Smith, Noah Clowney, Dariq Whitehead, Cam Thomas, and Day'Ron Sharpe. Now, on my first run-through, I did Day'Ron Sharpe.
No.
You know, this is kind of like the interesting thing with guys who haven't been that exciting while they're in the league, because for Day'Ron Sharpe, just to be eligible to be protected, they would have to pick up his third-year option. Mm-hmm. If they declined his third-year option, he's ineligible. Now, if they pick it up and unprotect him, and then he doesn't get selected in the expansion draft, they've just guaranteed his money for another year when they may have not really wanted him there in the first place. So you, when you had gone through, had put Ben Simmons there. And the more I thought about it, the more I think maybe Ben Simmons is the correct answer. Maybe I just decline Day'Ron Sharpe's option or pick it up, either way. But I just dangle Ben Simmons out there in the hopes that someone will take his final year, $40 million.
Yeah, it allows for a super duper easy trade with Portland. Like, you have this TPE. Does Dame fit entirely in the TPE? Probably not.
He wouldn't. No, he wouldn't.
He wouldn't. But probably you have, like, I don't know, caps. I don't know. But I think that, I don't know if it complicates or I don't know if it makes it better for the Dame trade or not. But
I do kind of like the idea, though, because if you could bait one of these expansion teams into taking Ben Simmons, now all of a sudden you have all of those Phoenix picks and like a $40+ million whatever trade exception. you could make a star trade pretty easily with that,
Yeah.
as long as someone's not like on one of these insane maxes. And so I do kind of like the flexibility, and I do kind of think that one of these expansion teams probably would take Ben Simmons, just looking at the options that have been available to us so far.
Yeah, and it may be a good thing because, I mean, maybe like a complete change of scenery, a low pressure environment where whatever you do, it doesn't really matter because the goal of the expansion team is likely to get a very high pick and move on from that. So it's, hey, do whatever, and it's going to be fine. So I think that is a good place for Ben Simmons to restart his career if he can. And so, yeah, that to me is a
Enid,
no-brainer.
with the Enid Outlaws, starting point guard Ben Simmons. Moving on to Atlanta. Yeah, so we're going to unprotect Ben Simmons, get Day'Ron Sharpe out of here. Moving on to the Atlanta Hawks, which I do think this one was probably the most interesting of this first batch of Eastern Conference teams, because they have 12 guys who are eligible, which means they need to unprotect 4. Trae Young, Clint Capella, DeAndre Hunter, Bogdanovich, DeJounte Murray, Okongwu, Sadiq Bey, Bufkin, AJ Griffin, Jalen Johnson, Bruno Fernando, and Mohamed Gouye, if that's how you pronounce it.
Yeah.
He was their second-round pick this year. So you have to unprotect 4 of these guys. This was your team, and you decided to go with Clint Capella, Jalen Johnson, Bruno Fernando, and Mohamed Gouye. So what was your thinking? But the 2 names that stick out, Jalen Johnson and Clint Capella.
Yeah, I flip-flop between Jalen Johnson and Bogdanovich, mainly because I think that this is another jail-free card, something like that for Atlanta, where you can get off of a big contract, make your salary cap more normal. I think that Capella is the odd man out because he would be picked, likely, and it's something that allows finally Atlanta to go small to play Okongwu, who needs minutes. And so Capella to me was a no-brainer. Between Jalen Johnson and Bogdanovich at the end of it, I said, okay, do I like Jalen Johnson? Did I like him in the draft process? And both answers were no. So at the end of the day, Bogdan is a functional NBA player. And I mean, Atlanta wants to win. So why protecting a guy that you don't like? Well, I don't like it. I don't like him, and it doesn't produce on the court. It's cheap, yes, but again, I think that if someone will be picked, is going to be Clint Capella and not Jalen Johnson. So it's a fake protection anyway.
It is an interesting decision though, because Capella, at this point, if he was drafted, he would be a $22 million expiring contract, whereas Bogdanovich starting in the 24-25 season, so not this coming season, the next season, $17 million, $16 million. And then a $16 million team option. So he still has 2 years after this coming season, which is like a more significant contract for them, especially when you think about they just signed DeJounte Murray to another deal. So I don't know. Maybe we haven't been thinking about the cap as much in some of these decisions. I mean, I do think a team would take Clint Capella, although maybe they take Jalen Johnson. That's kind of an interesting conversation for an expansion team. Which of those guys you would take? Capella, obviously a great vet. You already know that he's like solid, but Jalen Johnson offers you way more upside and was a recent first-round pick. So we'll find out on Friday who people want to take.
Yeah,
but yeah, I thought that was the first interesting team who actually had a real decision.
Yeah,
Miami is pretty boring. They have 8 eligible players: Jimmy Butler, Bam, Tyler Hero, Duncan Robinson, Jaquez, Jovic, Orlando Robinson, and Haywood Highsmith. So it came down to those last 2 guys. I decided to unprotect Haywood Highsmith just because he was a restricted free agent. I'm just not anticipating that a team is going to be so excited about Haywood Highsmith that they'd be willing to take that risk that he's just going to sign somewhere else. I think you could easily make the case for Orlando Robinson as well, who just signed a deal after being on a 2-way last year, not playing in the playoffs. Haywood Highsmith did play in the playoffs, so I do think there's a debate there. I just don't know how much it really matters.
No, it doesn't. Both unlikely to be picked, and if they are, who cares?
If they are, who cares? Similarly, with the Chicago Bulls, who have 9 eligible players: Zach LaVine, Vooch, Kobe White, Patrick Williams, Alex Caruso, Ayo Dosunmu, Javon Carter, Carlick Jones, and Justin Phillips. And Carlick Jones could be waived, but we had him as our unprotected player.
Yeah.
Who cares? Not a big deal for them. So we're going to move right along to Toronto.
Yeah, I did have, though, the impellent urgency to put Nick Vucevic. Yeah, I didn't read.
You tried to unprotect Lonzo Ball, even though he was not eligible.
Yeah. I read the list twice. I said, "Whoa, where is Lonzo?" I said, "It's right there," but I didn't read it. But anyway, this was not the need, the urge that I felt this morning. I really want to unprotect Nick Vucevic. Yes, just for someone to pick him up and to save the Bulls from this mess they are in. Like, why did you extend him? I know that there are like ideas of having contracts to trade to get someone else there. I mean, okay, I don't know. I hate the player.
Well, you hate the player?
Yeah, not the guy. He sounds like a very nice human being, but the way he plays, I think it's one of the player that is. It's not conducive to winning basketball games.
I remember Kevin Pelton used to be so high on Vooch back in his Orlando days.
Yeah, because of production numbers. Those were always really, really high. Like nice shooter, gravity, like offensive efficiency. But when you can't play defense and you are just a black hole offensively, it's really, really hard to be a functional NBA player.
Yeah, he's been a very good if you're in a punt blocks fantasy team, he's a really good option because he rebounds the ball really well, he scores points, and he shoots threes. Kind of like Kevin Love back in the day. He was also a good punt blocks guy. Okay, so that was the Bulls. Bulls aren't that interesting. Toronto, somewhat interesting. 10 guys were eligible: Pirtle, Schroeder, Chris Boucher, Scotty Barnes, Grady Dick, Jalen McDaniels, Precious Achiuwa, who can be a restricted free agent, Malachi Flynn, who can be a restricted free agent, Jeff Downton, who can be a restricted free agent, and Christian Koloko. Now, you went with Christian Koloko because of your hatred of centers.
Yes.
I went with Malachi Flynn and Jeff Downton. I went with Malachi because even though, yes, Toronto does need guards, I'm going back to the restricted free agency thing. Yeah. Someone loved Malachi Flynn that much that they're going to grab him.
Yeah, I don't think that will happen, by the way. I was tempted to put Bolton there, like just to see. I mean, I didn't understand the signing of him, the re-signing. It's nonsensical to me to put a non-shooting center with Scotty Barnes. And again, in order to save Toronto from themselves, I said, okay, let's put Bolton there and see what happens.
2 non-shooting centers, because now you have your entire center rotation does not shoot.
Yeah, which I don't know. I don't like it. But anyway, I mean, Malachi Flynn, Koloko, whatever. It's okay. I think that Indy is way more interesting.
Yes, so we're going to come to the Pacers next, who have 10 eligible players. And I feel like the Pacers are the first team, there's more of this in the Western Conference, of one of these young rebuilding teams who have accumulated a lot of semi-interesting to very interesting young players and actually have to make a decision about who they would unprotect in the scenario, and would likely have one of their players drafted in the expansion draft. So there are 10 eligible players: Miles Turner, TJ McConnell, Mathurin, Jarris Walker, Halliburton, Aaron Nesmith, Obi Toppin, Isaiah Jackson, Ben Shepherd, and Andrew Nembhard. All of those guys, like if you're a Pacers fan, you probably have interest in all of those guys, even someone like TJ McConnell, who's been like very steady for them. But with all of their guards, I do think it makes sense, as you did, to unprotect TJ McConnell. And then you chose to unprotect Isaiah Jackson, who in this scenario, they'd be picking up his 4th-year option, so that if he wasn't picked up, or if he wasn't drafted in the expansion draft, he would come back on, for his 4th year. Why did you go with Isaiah Jackson over someone like, I guess Ben Shepherd would be the only other option. Maybe Obi Toppin.
Yeah, Ben Shepherd is the last draft pick that they make. So I think that they have a project. Isaiah Jackson, again, non-shooter, rim running, high energy, big man. They have Miles Turner. They have Obi Toppin, who likes to play fast, to be like the foreman in many lineups. And I went for Aaron Nesmith above those guys because of shooting. The TJ McConnell is basically, hey, they drafted Ben Shepherd, they have Andrew Dunbar, they have Ben Mathurin, they have Halliburton, they have too many guards. And even if I love TJ as a presence in the locker room, if I have to unprotect someone, I just need my best talent. And maybe it's because I don't know as much of Indiana, because it may be something like, wait, what are you unprotecting Kenrich Williams really for OKC? So it can be just because we don't know how TJ McConnell is important for that locker room. So it may be just observing from afar kind of thing. And maybe Indiana would love to unprotect a guy like Nesmith, who is a restricted free agent. And if someone picks him up, great. If not, they resign him.
Yeah, TJ McConnell gives me like Earl Watson vibes in the sense that he seems like he would be perfect for like the first point guard of a brand new expansion team.
Mm-hmm.
Like not an amazing player, but like can be a starting point guard, can be like a low end starting point guard in the league. And I could totally see a team prioritizing that over someone like Isaiah Jackson, who I remember being like sort of interested in the run up to that draft.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, the lack of stretchability, you just kind of wonder, like, what is the real ceiling here? Like, what is the real upside? Okay, so that brings us to Washington. Now, this one, you got very juicy on, Miky. They have 11 players eligible, so they have to unprotect 3 of them. Jordan Poole, Kuz, Daniel Gafford, Landry Shamet, Bilal Coulibaly, Denny Abdia, Johnny Davis, Corey Kispert, Patrick Baldwin Jr., Xavier Cooks, and Ryan Rollins. Now, before I show my answers, who I was going to unprotect, who was the name that you chose to unprotect, Miky?
The first guy, and I will stand by it, is Jordan Poole. To me, it was a very bad move for the Wizards. Why are you getting a guy like that? Maybe as a tanking wizard, and in that capacity, I kind of understand it. But it's a long commitment to a tanking king. There are like cheap tanking kings, like get Baisley, get guys like that. Those are perfect tanking commanders. Jordan Poole, to me, is a guy that a team will just say, wow, did they unprotect him? Cool, let's pick him up. And Washington finds themselves with a fat player option of, I don't know, 40 million, 35 million, whatever. They can get unwanted contract pretty easily. They can help another team they can facilitate any trade in next summer, because it will last until August next year. So it's going to be a very useful trade exception, and it's perfect for a team that is rebuilding like Washington. You can get a nice first if you can absorb like a big unwanted contract, which is a much wiser use of your cap space than someone like Jordan Poole.
Okay, so 2 things. First, do you think it's more likely that they would get something good or something decent from that traded player exception versus allowing Jordan Poole to just kind of like do whatever he wants for a couple of years, rebuild his value? I mean, he's going to score. He's going to put up points and counting stats in Washington. Because I'm thinking about this front office, they're coming from OKC. Would they really just give up on a contract like that instead of just trying to rehab the value and potentially get something down the line?
Yeah, that is also a bit a nice view of it. I don't know. Do you expect the first? Maybe. A good one? Probably not. I mean, Jordan Poole has serious defensive deficiencies. And I mean, he created a fracture in a locker room that it was probably one of the most tied up locker room in the entire league. So I don't know how much you can get from him. But sure, it's not Al Horford, where he's a nice guy He's a known commodity. You rehab his value on the court.
Not a nice guy.
Yeah.
You think Jordan Poole's not a nice guy?
Is.
No, I'm talking about Jordan Poole.
No, I mean, even if he is a nice guy, I mean, the precedent is huge. And so I don't know if a team will like to say, okay, let's get 2 firsts for Jordan Poole. That I don't see happening. And I think that you can get a protected first if you get someone off someone else's books that is really not wanted. I mean, suppose that in a trade for Lillard, they really want to give away Ben Simmons in a trade so that his salary counts for 120%. That is a bad salary for 2 years. And so if you use that trade exception, you can absorb him and you can get it first.
Now hold on, because Ben Simmons' contract is like 40 something. Do those, whatever those rules, the new rules are, like 125% or whatever, do those apply to a traded player exception?
No. I don't know. I don't have the numbers in front of me. I don't know how much Jordan Poole makes.
He only makes $30 million next year.
Oh, okay.
Well,
okay.
actually, $28 million next year.
No, then no.
The other thing I was going to bring up is with the salary floor. Like if he was taken in the draft, they would definitely be below the salary floor, because really the only big contracts they have is Kuzma, and that's it.
Yeah.
So I don't know how that would work. Like they would have to reuse that cap space in some way anyways going into the following season. And you mentioned one idea, which would be absorbing like some big contract. But if that wasn't there, I'd almost worry that they'd be kind of forced into the position where they're going to have to sign somebody
like Gabby Dak. Yeah, maybe
this Gabby Dak for $20 million. Yeah,
into my hatred for Jordan Poole, it blinded me a little bit too much. What's Landry Shamet, PBJ, and Javier Cooks.
Yeah, okay. And so Shamet, I just think that's still a bad deal. I can't believe how long it goes. Like let me look at his contract real quick. So Landry Shamet, oh my god, this is insane to me. He makes 10.2 this year, 11 the next year, 11.7 the year after that.
Yeah, it's peanuts.
I know, but 2 seasons beyond this next season. Why would you want to play Landry Shamet that much?
Yeah, but it's inconsequential. It's 10 millions. That's fine.
It's a sure. But who cares? I'm just saying, I'm putting that out there. If someone else wants it, have at it.
Yeah.
And then
that's okay. And you hate PBJ. Yeah, me too. But
I did not say I hated him. You're the one that hates everyone who's unprotected.
Yeah.
PBJ. Honestly, what I did for this is I went on Bullets Forever, the Wizards blog, to look at Summer League review and to see which players they liked, because I didn't have strong opinions. And they felt much more positively about Ryan Rollins and Johnny Davis, who I wasn't super considering. And so that's why I went with PBJ. And who knows? Maybe he would get picked up in this expansion draft. You could still talk yourself into it.
Yeah. Yeah,
or maybe not.
Yeah, we'll see. So that they can leave you this nice Landry Shamet salary on your books.
I wonder, I guess there has to be rules for the expansion team about reaching the salary floor, because just going through some of these names, even if you drafted 14 of these players, there's no chance
salary. Yeah,
you're getting to the salary floor. So they must give them like a few years buffer to get up to that number instead of forcing them to overpay. But like you said, Gabby Dak might be available, and they could bring him back, the expansion team.
Hey, it was nice in the EuroLeague last year.
What if Gabby Dak was brought over to reach the salary floor for the new Seattle team, and then he exacted his revenge on the Oklahoma City Thunder franchise and became our biggest villain?
That is a great story. It would be nice.
It would be nice. Okay, we have 3 teams left. Orlando, a team that you think would be more interesting than it actually ends up being.
Yeah.
They have 11 eligible names: Jonathan Isaac, Wendell Carter Jr., Paulo Banchero, Mo Wagner, Jalen Suggs, Anthony Black, Cole Anthony, Franz Wagner, Chuma Okeke, Jet Howard, and Caleb Houston. But when you go through it, it's pretty obvious. It's Jonathan Isaac, it's Mo Wagner, and it's Chuma.
Yeah. My hatred almost get into the way of this. He said, "Okay, I have to unprotect Cole Anthony because I hate him." I said, "Okay, no, it's not really necessary. Jonathan Isaac's health is a mess. Mo Wagner, are we really protecting a brother just because he's a brother? No." And Chuma was really ineffective for them last year, and Cole Anthony was good. So, okay, I think
you've already shown with your thanasis on protection that you do not care about brothers. You are going to unprotect every brother that you can.
Yeah, and I think that in this case, someone will try to see, well, is it a risk to get Isaac? Yes, a huge one. But it's worth trying. I mean, Mo Wagner doesn't do anything for you, really. Chuma Okiki is okay. I mean, as a role player. Isaac, if he if somehow you can get into Seattle, who has nice hospitals, I mean, according to some TV series, at least, and you can rehab
What a sell.
him, yeah, in a proper way, then you may have a steal there.
Not even good team medical situation. You're talking about the actual city's hospital situation. You like the hospital situation, and that is going to.
I have no idea. That is the first thing that came into my mind.
Yeah, and even
series,
still,
all the Met series are there somehow.
Even if he doesn't work out at all, at that point he would be a $17.4 million expiring contract in 24-25. So it's not, and as we've seen going through this, like there haven't been a ton of big contracts eligible to be drafted. And so if you are an expansion team and you're thinking kind of like what Washington's doing right now, what OKC did the last few years, absorbing these bad contracts, it'd be nice to have an expiring contract on board with which to facilitate those type of deals.
Yeah.
So maybe that's a reason to draft Jonathan Isaac regardless. Okay, 2 more teams. Charlotte is next.
Oh, Charlotte.
Charlotte, I think, Charlotte was my team. They took me the most amount of time because I have like zero opinion on so many of their young players that I had to go do some like research to find out who Hornets fans like, because I don't want to like obviously cut someone that they're still really high on, then maybe I'm just not thinking about that often. So they have 9 eligible guys, but actually they have the potential of 11 eligible guys. I have decided to decline the 4th-year options for James Bouknight and Kai Jones. Now, if you want to pick up those options, they would then become eligible. You would then have to protect them or not protect them. No. I'm deciding just to decline the options. Kai Jones was not good in Summer League. James Bouknight was not good in Summer League. They have not been good in the NBA so far. I just feel like there's, and especially with someone like Bouknight, like they have so many guards at this point between Amari Bailey, Nick Smith Jr., LaMelo Ball, Trey Mann, according to Andrew, that they don't need James Bouknight. So I declined his option.
Good.
I did pick up JT Thor's option.
Why?
Which that was based on my research that there are still Hornets fans that really believe in JT Thor. So like, why not? I'm already declining 2 of their recent rookies.
Okay.
So I'll keep 1 around. I'll keep JT Thor around. So they're 9 guys who are eligible: Terry Rozier, LaMelo, Brandon Miller, Cody Martin, Nick Richards, Mark Williams, Nick Smith Jr., JT Thor, and Bryce McGowens. Now, it sounds like you would unprotect JT Thor. I unprotected Bryce McGowens. I could be talked out of it.
Why are you protecting Nick Richards?
I don't know. Why not?
Like, they need to play one center. That is enough for any NBA team. And that center is Mark Williams. This is why you unprotect Nick Richards. There's no reason to keep him around.
First of all, I do think Nick Richards would get picked up if he was unprotected.
Great.
Also, I don't think he's as bad as you're suggesting.
I'm not saying that he's bad. I'm saying you need to play Mark Williams 30 minutes a night. The rest, you can have funny lineups with no centers, like being a little bit modern, like playing Terry, LaMelo, Brandon Miller, Cody Martin, and maybe like a guard, so that you play like funky basketball, extremely losing basketball, but hey, we're modern. Like, why are you playing at all times a center that can't shoot? That blows my mind. I don't want that.
Okay, so you want to unprotect Nick Richards. So Nick Richards' deal, basically 3 years, 15 million, straight 5 million every year for the next 3 years. So by the time an expansion team drafted him, if they chose him, he'd have 2 years, 10 million left, which is more than like if you pick up Book Knight's option. Or sorry, it's less than what Book Knight's option would be. It's less than it's about what Kai Jones would be if you had picked up his option. Okay, so you would rather go with him over Bryce McGowan's or JT Thor.
Yeah, it's not that Bryce McGowan's is like something, but at least is not a non-shooting center. At least,
and you don't think that they could potentially get like a second for Nick Richards? Because that would be the other option in preparation for this expansion draft. If there's someone that you like are debating on, could they? Is there a team out there that would just want Nick Richards?
No. Who?
I don't know. Okay, so I'm
No. It's your choice. I'm just saying that mine is okay. Let's get everyone. I mean, JT Thor can play some center. Really, he can't, but you can pretend that he can.
Yeah, he's 6'10", 205. Did you know his nickname God of Thunder? He shot 40%, under 40% from the field last year.
Nice.
I also think Bryce McGowan's did as well. Bryce McGowan shot also under 40% from the field. We have a lot of great options here with Charlotte.
Yeah. It's so depressing. They have been bad for so long, and they have nothing to show for it.
And what's frustrating is that they've had so many draft picks. I mean, we just talked about 3 draft picks in the same draft: Book Knight, Kai Jones, JT Thor. And I'm taking JT Thor, not because he's so amazing, but he's better than these other 2 guys. And he was the second-round pick. He was the one taken 37th overall.
Yeah.
Whereas Book Knight and Kai Jones were first-round picks. Oh, my gosh. I want to go look at who they could have taken. Okay, so after Book Knight, you have Josh Primo, Chris Duarte, Moses Moody, Corey Kispert, Alperen Şengün, Trey Murphy. Man, that's pretty good. Trey Mann. And then Kai Jones. And after Kai Jones, you have Jalen Johnson, Keon Johnson, Isaiah Jackson, Garuba, Josh Christopher, Quentin Grimes.
Yeah, not a great draft.
Not amazing, but that middle part of the draft, starting with Moody to Trey Murphy, I mean, those 4 guys in a row who are NBA players.
Yeah, and Primo at the time was really interesting.
He was, absolutely.
I mean, it was a no-brainer to pick in the lottery, and it happens to be like also a big dummy. But
that would have actually been more in keeping with Charlotte's history. To pick another guy who has issues off the court because they're collecting so many of these guys. Okay, well, I'm going to leave Nick Richards on the team.
Nice.
I'm kicking Bryce McGowan's out. Okay, final selections. Now, Michele, you did something for the Detroit Pistons that you did not need to do, which is that you only protected 7 players. We will go through. They have 11 eligible players, which means you only need to unprotect 3, but Michele decided he was going to unprotect 4 because he just doesn't. Well, you'll explain in a second. So the names: Bogdanovich, Bagley, Wiseman, Cade Cunningham, Sarr, Jaden Ivey, Killian Hayes, Isaiah Stewart, Jalen Duren, Marcus Sasser, and Isaiah Livers. You decide to unprotect Marvin Bagley, James Wiseman, Killian Hayes, and Isaiah Livers. Again, see if you're watching on YouTube, here's a blank spot right here where Michele could have protected an 8th guy. Why did you not want to protect
Isaiah Livers?
And why did you not want to do that?
I didn't need that. I mean, to me, they have 7 good players, and I was really into not protecting Bojan Bogdanovic as well. Like, why are you protecting all these guys? I mean, they don't have good players. I mean, if you look at the roster, it doesn't make any sense. I mean, even the guys they kept, like Bogdanovic, Cade, okay, complimentary, fine. Sarr, great. Jaden Ivey, sure. And then I have Isaiah Stewart, Jalen Duren, where you know from the beginning that they can't play together. Like, and then you add Bagley.
You don't believe in beef stew shooting.
No. And even if I do, like, it's I do believe in Jalen Williams, J-Will, ability of shooting the basketball. I still don't like the pairing with Chet Holmgren because it's not something that is going to create space for me. Everyone who's defending Detroit will just cheat on both Duren and Stewart until they become guys that take like 9 threes per game, 8 threes per game, and it will never happen because they are so slow in like Stewart is so slow that you can't cheat and recover. So this will never lead to actual spacing. I mean, Brook Lopez is a guy that he's very tall. So even if you close up, he can still get the shot out clean, and he's quicker than Beef Stew. And he's taking so many. If you leave him open, he can take 10 threes a game. And he will do that. Stewart is not at that point, and he's short. So that doesn't work for him.
Someone in the comments, everyone needs a smile, says, should have protected Livers, not because he's good, but to increase the chance of losing one of the others. I think that's a pretty good argument.
Yeah, let's do that. Let's do that.
Yeah, because if you have this chance to get rid of Marvin Bagley, why not take it, you know?
Yeah.
Which of those three, Marvin Bagley, James Wiseman, Killian Hayes, do you think a expansion team will prioritize? Because those are three. I mean, all 3 guys were taking in the top 7 of their respective drafts.
Is this a real question, Alex?
Yes.
I have no idea how to answer that.
Because I do think one of these guys will be drafted on Friday, just based on what the available options are.
Okay, I'm not going to be there, so pick one.
I mean, I'm not picking Bagley, so it's Wiseman or Killian.
Does that make you happy? Like to pick either one?
No. I might pick Killian. Over Wiseman.
Nice. Now you have a 0-level scorer that is turnover prone and doesn't play real defense.
Okay, you were going to say something mean, regardless of who I picked.
Exactly.
And also,
that is exactly my point. There is nobody to be picked there. And I have no idea why they got all those players. Like, why are you trading and get those guys? Like,
well, they wanted
what
to
is
see
the purpose?
if Wiseman, Duren was going to be like the twin towers of the future. Robinson, Duncan. They were going to be the next Robinson, Duncan. And they just had to see if that was going to happen. Killian Hayes, good defender. Admit it. He's a good defender. He's a good passer. I've seen him make some very, very impressive passes. And yeah, he can't shoot, but guess what? I'm going to be also drafting. I'm trying to find some shooters.
Malachi Flynn.
Supposed to be a shooter. Okay, great. Jalen Johnson, not Ben. I can't take Ben Simmons now.
No, Miles McBride maybe will shoot it in the future.
Okay, maybe.
Hey, Dean Wade can shoot it.
Dean Wade, okay. Yeah, so I'm going to surround Killian with all these amazing shooting options that I have, and it's going to look great. Okay, who would you take Wiseman?
No.
You would take none of them. You just wouldn't draft anyone from Detroit.
No. Well,
but one of these guys will get drafted. Look at the options we've had.
It would be James Wiseman.
Okay. I want to ask you. So we just did the East.
No, not really. I would probably draft the guard myself because I don't draft bigs. So
that's right.
Yeah.
Who do you think is the best? If we were just drafting the Eastern Conference, who do you think the number 1 pick would be?
It's really sad, but it's going to be either TJ McConnell or Clint Capella.
Oh,
which
right.
is
I forgot.
Very sad.
You kind of talked me into Ben Simmons, though.
Yeah. Also, top 3 pick, those 3: TJ, Ben Simmons, Clint Capella. Nice.
Man, what about a TJ Ben Simmons backcourt? What do you think about that?
Wow, that is.
Actually, did they play together when they were
in
Philly?
Oh, clank. That's great.
They did play together, didn't they? In Philly?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, so continuity. We love that. Yeah, so this was the East. And as you see, not a ton of great options. Now, tomorrow, which we'll actually be posting on Wednesday, we're going to do the Western Conference teams. there are some more interesting names, and we will get to OKC, who I think has some, especially because I left out one of their players in my initial write-up, which means I have to unprotect another guy from the Thunder. I would say the Thunder, of all the teams we did, are probably the toughest in terms of you actually having to unprotect players you like. I think Memphis, as people will see,
Memphis
is also another tough one. And Houston was not as tough as I thought it might be.
No.
Houston was pretty straightforward.
New Orleans, no. Easy. Portland, quite easy. Even if you get a functional player out of that team, I think. And let me think. I mean, again, the teams that drafted the most are the ones where you get more value. For Memphis, I did some interesting and probably controversial assessments. We'll see.
Very excited to hear that.
And but yeah, it's probably the West where the best players are going to be picked. And again, I don't think that the expansion team has to draft 15 players. They can draft.
They don't.
8, 7, 10, whatever. From the Eastern Conference teams, I think that 8 guys you might get in terms of drafting them, because guys like Highsmith, I mean, not a rotation player, but probably someone who gets picked just to see, okay, he played for the Heat, let's see.
Yeah.
Kind of things.
Yeah,
even
same
Malachi
with like
Flynn.
Peyton Pritchard. Yeah,
Peyton Pritchard.
Guys who have been buried on good teams for the last couple of years.
Yeah.
Who are going into restricted free agency, although it'd be unrestricted in this case. Yeah, those guys, you probably take a chance on some of those. Okay, so that was the Eastern Conference. We're going to do the Western Conference tomorrow on Monday around 10 a.m. So we'll be live on YouTube for that, and then that'll come out as the Wednesday pod. And then this Friday, with all these amazing names that we have unprotected, we are going to do a live expansion draft for 2 made-up teams, which should be very exciting. The one thing I did want to mention, and me and McKelly were texting about this, these rules that we came up with, these are based on the rules that they used back in 1995. One aspect of that I think is interesting is that there's so many shorter term contracts now that there are so many more guys who are ineligible to be protected. And I wonder if back in 95, there were just more guys on longer term contracts. And as a result, you had to make more decisions about protecting or unprotecting.
Yeah.
And as a result, I wonder if the NBA would consider reducing the number to protect down to 7 so that there would actually be some more players of interest available to expansion teams, because that would significantly change things. That would get you to a point where you are having to unprotect players. Even for some of these teams that we went through today, it was like super easy to protect 8. But then if you had to do one more, now you're like having to choose someone who you might actually like.
Yeah, even Milwaukee will lose a good player. Boston will lose a good player.
Indiana,
more juicy. Yeah, Indiana. Yeah, Memphis will lose a very good player. OKC will have to announce to someone like Kenrich Williams, Cason Wallace, Usman Jang.
Orlando, like Caleb Houston would be the choice, but still someone that like was a recent first round draft for them. So that would potentially change things a lot. And I wonder if the NBA would make a change like that. It would make the expansion draft so much more interesting. And I just hope that we actually get this in real life, an expansion draft, because it would be so good for podcast content and like the run up to the draft and doing all these fake drafts, learning which teams are protecting which guys in the run up. That would be so exciting. Okay, so join us tomorrow. Leave a 5-star review. Subscribe to our YouTube. Hit the bell for notifications. Anything else, McKelly?
No, it was fun. And the Western Conference will be even better.
All right, so enjoy the rest of your Sunday or Monday whenever you're listening to this, and we will talk to you again soon.